New data shows that there's been no spike in evictions after the end of the eviction moratorium. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have a couple of interesting articles for you today, and they're going over the fact that even though it might have seemed like there was going to be a big spike in evictions after the end of the eviction moratorium, it just hasn't played out that way across the country. Now, there has been an increase in evictions from during the pandemic, obviously, because nobody could do any evictions during that time, but there hasn't been this huge spike of people, just millions of people like they were predicting, the tsunami of evictions like they described that they thought was going to happen. Now, obviously, the government believes that it was the rental assistance programs and the temporary extension of the eviction moratorium that allowed this to happen. But my belief is that a lot of the tenants who were going to be evicted, they made a way when they realized that, oh crap, now this really is happening. Now I really do have to pay my rent. So they either decided to move on out or pay up what was owed. And that's why a lot of these evictions didn't happen. Or they just worked out a deal with their landlords. So the government, I don't think they're right in believing that the rental assistance program is what was saving a lot of these renters. But, that's what they're saying for right now. But before I get into these two articles, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Do you think the rental assistance program is the reason why there wasn't the huge tsunami of evictions that they were predicting? Or do you believe there was something else? Okay, I know I believe it was something else, but you never know. Maybe it was the rental assistance after all. Anyway, first article I have comes from usnews.com, and it says, Treasury claims rental assistance helped stop eviction wave. And let's see what it says, okay? The number of households receiving emergency rental assistance has increased steadily in recent months, with no major increase in people being turned out of their homes, despite the expiration of the federal eviction moratorium, the Biden administration said Monday. Fresh numbers released by the Treasury Department, which oversees the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, showed that the number of households receiving the benefits jumped 10% in September, up to 510,000 households, compared with 459,000 in August. There has been no major national spike in evictions after the federal moratorium came down, with eviction filings remaining below historical averages, the Treasury Department said in a statement, citing data from Princeton University's Eviction Lab. And the last time I checked, I believe that they still have only dispersed about 1/3 of the amount of money for the rental assistance program. So that's part of the reason I don't believe that the rental assistance was what was keeping all these evictions from happening. Okay, I think that tenants working out deals with landlords, tenants leaving willingly on their own, okay, and tenants paying the money to the landlords that was owed, and the economy improving, etc. That is the reason why a lot of evictions didn't occur. There never was going to be this huge tsunami of evictions. I know a lot of people thought there was going to be, but it was a bunch of BS, and that was further proof in my mind that we never needed the eviction moratorium in the first place, okay? If they hadn't had the eviction moratorium in place in the first place, the number of evictions wouldn't have been crazy, okay? It would have been pretty much normal, because the people who are getting evicted now, they're the same people who would have faced financial crisis whether the world was locked down or not, okay? Congress authorized $46.5 billion in emergency rental assistance late last year, but the initial rollout of the program was plagued by slow dispersal, with administration officials publicly blaming state and municipal partners for bottlenecking the process with excessive bureaucracy and slow reaction time. In response, the government issued new guidance over the summer, encouraging states to cut down on paperwork and allow applicants to self-attest their hardship without providing bank statements or pay stubs. The rental assistance program, it was just caught up in bureaucracy, but the bureaucracy didn't start with the state and local. It started with the feds. They're the ones who put all those rules in place, and all the states were trying to do was figure out a way to actually implement those rules, okay? They're the ones who put income requirements and all this other mess on it when they should have just said, hey, we're just going to cut checks directly to the landlords, okay? And they couldn't do that. They instead passed the buck down and it became a mess. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of these rental assistance programs. And I'm not a fan of everything else that was going on during the eviction moratorium. But in my opinion, the eviction tsunami, it was never going to happen in the first place, okay? So the second article I have today, and it's coming out of New Orleans, right? And it's going on about the same issue, okay? And it says, New Orleans area eviction filings balloon while rental aid blunts the worst fears of surge. And it's coming from NOLA.com. And let's see what this one says about the situation in New Orleans. As she walked into First City Court in New Orleans on Thursday, Pamela Greenberry was ready to boot a tenant from her St. Roche rental property, though she wasn't too thrilled about it. Greenberry, a production line worker at a bunny bread factory, didn't see much choice. Her tenant was $11,000 behind on rent. Greenberry, 66, was having trouble paying her note, and her insurance company hadn't coughed up enough money for Hurricane Ida repair, she said. But by the time a clerk called her case, Greenberry and her tenant were smiling. She'd accepted an offer for $7,000 in rental aid from a city employee stationed at the courthouse. In exchange, Greenberry promised to keep the tenant in place. So what it sounds like is the city of New Orleans, they actually have people who are willing to sign people up for rental assistance right there at the courthouse when they're facing eviction. Now, that is an okay idea, okay? But from what it says here, she was owed $11,000 and they only, are going to be paying her $7,000. Now, I know that's enough probably for her to be able to survive, get by or whatever, but she's still out $4,000 after all of this. So, yeah, it's better than nothing, but it's pretty bad when they say, hey, we're going to get you rental assistance at the courthouse door. I mean, why wasn't she able to get this rental assistance any earlier than this, okay? These rental assistance programs have been around for quite a while. The eviction moratorium has been going on for quite a while. So why didn't this tenant sign up for these programs to get rental assistance 6 months ago? Because they didn't think that they were actually going to get evicted, and then they waited till the very last minute. So this landlord, she's working a full-time job. She's a small landlord, obviously, just like me, has to work a full-time job, and she got screwed for months on end while the tenant wasn't paying, and had to take the tenant all the way to court before she finally got something out of it. That's my gripe, okay? That a lot of the tenants weren't doing anything to help these landlords at any point in time because they just didn't care. So, what I would like to have seen happen is she gets the $7,000 and she still gets rid of that tenant. And, she sues the tenant for the remaining $4,000 that's owed. Okay, that's what I would like to see happen. But, if she worked out a deal with this tenant saying that she would take $7,000, well, good for her for getting something. But, I don't see anything in this article that says that, she actually was paid that amount at the courthouse. It just says she worked out that amount with the rental assistance program. So let's continue. Maybe it says more about it in the next few paragraphs. It was good to a certain extent, the landlord said. They should try to assist us before it gets this far. A month after a long series of federal and state eviction freezes ended, liberating landlords to oust tenants for unpaid rent, eviction courts in New Orleans area have rapidly ramped up operations. But the worst case scenario feared by housing advocates, that there would be a deluge of new eviction orders, hasn't come to pass, in part because of novel programs at Orleans and Jefferson Parish courts to intervene with 11th hour federal aid. And yeah, that's my big gripe, okay? The aid is at the 11th hour. It's at the very end of the process, okay? These people, they have needed money. Landlords have needed the money from these tenants for a year and a half, and they waited until now, just now, to say, oh, before you kick this tenant out, here's a little bit of money. Well, you know what? This is why people don't trust the government. This is why people don't want anything to do with any sort of eviction moratorium. That's why there's so much distrust for the bureaucracy, because they waited so long that this landlord just had to struggle financially for a year and a half until this eviction moratorium ended. And then they were talking about extending it further. And if it wasn't for the Supreme Court, it would have been extended further. So it just frustrates me. But anyway, the good news is, for the tenants at least, that there hasn't been the tsunami of evictions that was predicted. For landlords, a lot of them are now finally getting rental assistance. I still don't have faith that a lot of landlords are going to get 100% of what is owed to them. But for those who aren't, at least they're able to get those tenants out of their properties and rent them to people who are willing to pay at this point.